Um, Thank you very much for inviting me tonight. When Virender called me and said you have to talk about sketches, I got a bit into a panic because I've been sketching a lot, but I had to literally scout for sketches because I realized basically that I used to do much better sketches before when I was a student or a young architect than I'm doing now. So I had to gather through my books and find some sketches. I arrived in, so I'm going to talk about sketches and the relation of sketches to project. The first, when I arrived to India, I didn't know anything about Indian architecture. My knowledge was very superficial. I knew about, of course, Chandigarh and Ahmedabad, but I didn't have any knowledge of more classical Indian architecture. So my first way to learn and way to memorize in a way to reuse, I mean, I didn't know at that point that I would stay in India for 20 years, was to sketch more than making picture. And sketch is a very important, intimate process, which I still do, which is a way to understand things. If you take picture, you don't really understand what you see. So I used to travel around. I had some free time on weekends. I used to take night train, travel around, do lots of sketches, and start creating a kind of library of knowledge on Indian architecture. So this is the Jama Masjid, which is a sketch from '97, and it was very important for me to come to the Jama Masjid after being in the kind of bust of old Delhi, because it was coming as a counterpoint to this massive activity and commercial activity, and suddenly this place was calm. This place, there was no business, there was no transaction, there was no... It was a really nice place. So I realized that this courtyard had something very magic to offer, so I sat around the edge and made lots of sketches at the beginning. Then I went to the Taj Mahal, of course, and here again, there was something very interesting to see, is that the back of the Taj Mahal is never published in architecture guidebooks. They always publish the front with that stupid garden with palm trees. Well, actually, the back with the Yamuna is far more interesting, and it's far more abstract. So you see the back, you see the river on the right, the mosque and the cemetery. And this was a kind of gateway on the river, which I didn't see before going there. So this is how sketches are a process to internalize and understand things. Now, this is a sketch in Gwalior, which is also a very interesting space where it's that this very high platform, of course, very interesting architecture, but the topography is something very, very rare. And of course, Banaras. Banaras was interesting for me because coming from Europe, it's probably the only city which was built only one side of the river with nothing on the other side, which, of course, symbolically is very strong because there is death and then there is maybe nothing. So that has a very strong impression on me, with that shape of a stadium almost, where from every gate you can see the other gate. So these are the things you integrate when you sketch more than when you take picture. And of course I went to Chandigarh, which was also a kind of shock, I would say, by the scale of it, the horizontality. I had no idea, looking at it from books, that it was that kind of sparseness between buildings. And I was lucky enough also to go to Dhaka. That was 20 years ago, and to make that sketch of the parliament, which is a sketch that helped me understand that in a completely flat land, which is floodable, the parliament is designed as an artificial hill. The way Louis Kahn designed the building is you have first layer of bricks, first layer of trees, and then another layer, and finally you end up with the large assembly, which is in concrete, but you don't see it as one isolated building. You see it with a layering of the depth to arrive to that monument. And from far, it looks like a medieval city. It doesn't look like a monumental building. So after that, we set up an office in Delhi. We did lots of competitions. So I would say the first part was about sketches as a way to know where you are, the way to understand things. And then these are sketches as a way to do a project in the initial stage. So these are mostly lost competition, because actually we realize that we sketch far more when we lose a competition than where we win it. So you will see the effect of it. So this is the IIM Udaipur, which Doshi finally has won. It's an amazing site. It's huge. It's 150 acres, or 300 acres. But what's interesting in the picture at the bottom is it's completely cut by a huge canyon. It's like a canyon. The water wasn't there. The water is only there seasonally. But the plot was divided into two parts, with one part which was a plateau, and another one which was rivers and hills. And we realized, being 20 kilometers from Udaipur, building close to the water was making sense. So in those sketches, which are the initial sketches, we realized building both sides of that canyon would make sense, and how to basically create that water retention and start basically creating that environment that you have in Udaipur, recreating it 20 kilometers away, and creating life out of a water retention system. So the earlier scheme is that, where we started damming the river or slowing the pace of the water in order to create a campus around that valley. And then, of course, there was many sketches of travel in Rajasthan, where the system of retaining the water, of building retaining wall, of basically catching all that by creating an inverted pyramid was very, very strong and very interesting. So these are sketches which are sketches of the process of making this project. And I must say, I played the game. I didn't make new sketches for that exhibition or for that presentation. These are all real sketches of that time. So that explain you the process. So these are sketches which explain how, with this Rajasthani retaining wall, the project could emerge from that vocabulary, from that identity, and from that technology as well, because everything is linked. So this is the academic block, one of the building, which could be a series of retaining wall, which could become buildings by locating them perpendicular to the hills. So there was a big drop of around 50 meters. So the building will basically scale down to the river, and then it becomes more geometric, because you need to at least show it that it's buildable, that this has some sense of reality. So we go closer to the thing, and finally, this was the final picture, which explained how the building is located on the hill, how it's built in the slope, and how by creating a series of check dams, we retain the water and we create a new environment. So that's unfortunately a lost competition, but the overall vision of creating this water pond and building around that in a kind of linear manner, but also spreading the project, didn't really attract the attention of the jury. They basically said, this is the most beautiful project, but that will cost far too much money, that will be extremely difficult to maintain. That is the kind of comment we got. So but that was an interesting widespread scheme. Then there is a school that we are doing in Bhopal, where we decided that for a school, the typology would be that for every classrooms, we will give the similar area outside as an outdoor space. So we did lots of sketches, these are my sketches, to see how an internal space could generate its outdoor space in different manner, and how you could teach in a classroom, but imagine that part of the teaching can also happen outside. So these are conceptual sketches that lead us to a process, who finally create a school, which is a little bit like a system of beehive, where every classroom has an extension, and every classroom get a terrace garden. That's a long project, that's a long building. The site is not so interesting, so that's mostly an invert-looking project, which finally will look like this, where it will look like a built hill, where the entire building will finally be covered with trees, and it's a very large-scale project. It's 3 lakh square foot, which for a school is relatively large. It's low-rise, but it's going to be a morphological project, where basically after 20 years, the building will become invisible. That's the model of the project. So you can see this kind of inhabitation of the children of every courtyard that will become part of the project. Then these are real projects, and this is now to explain how the sketches and how the drawing get part of a process, which is a long process, because it's a process that covers also construction. So this is a private house for an art collector in Coimbatore, in Tamil Nadu, where the site was relatively small. It was not a farmhouse. It's a plot which is around 30 meter by 30 meter. And we decided that there was no view. It was not a very interesting plot. So again, we started looking at a more internal process of looking at colors, looking at wall, looking at artwork, and how to do a house with a boundary wall of interest, which is Coimbatore is interesting because it's actually an industrial city. You have a long road, and most of the establishment of that city are part of that linear city, and that was quite in the city center. So there was no view, there was no concept, so we came up with this idea that instead of having a house or a bungalow and a garden, the swimming pool, everything will come inside the house like a big jigsaw puzzle that you assemble together, and every piece is either the swimming pool, the garden, a terrace garden, and it becomes an integrated thing where the boundary wall becomes part of the house. It's not a house, a garden, and a boundary wall. It's like the boundary wall becomes the external part of the house. So we came up with an idea that at the ground floor you could look at the boundary wall as a place where you could see sculpture, you could see the garden, you could see the landscape, and the boundary wall will be like the backdrop, a little bit like in the pavilion of Barcelona, where you have the sculpture and you have the marble wall at the back, which gives the background. So this was the idea of the ground floor, which was more a way to look at artwork, a way to frame it. And every piece of this, if I show you, every part of the building is basically a room that looks at a wall. That is the ground floor. And then the first floor, which is what this section shows, is not a three-dimensional experience. It becomes a pictorial experience where inside one of these two rooms, we had a system of colored facade that reflect the light inside, or colored facade that reflect the light on a wall, which is like a screen wall outside. So those sections explain that. And then we study the color, like for example, east was yellow, because the morning light is a bit more yellow than the midday. The midday turned into red, and then the evening turned into orange. So all that was something that you could see in parts, and that means every room would have a different color, a little bit like a painting of Mart Rothko. It is this idea that you will show a spectrum of color, and depending where the sun is, it will disappear. It will appear at some time, and it will disappear. So that's how it works. This is the plan. So the bottom is east, the top is west, the left is south, and the right side is north, and they have different color. That's the ground floor. Every part of this house has a room that looks at part of the wall with an artwork. The first floor is a much more intricate plan where the terrace garden are coming in. This is the axonometry that shows you that it's really like a big three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. And then we did a lot of study in model, in 1:20 model, to see how the light would reflect, how it would bounce back, is it really working? And we realized that it was quite nicely working with skylights and reflected tiles. So one room is green, one room is red, one room is yellow, one is pink, and they are all working on this reflected light. And sometimes it's white because the sun is on the other side. So it completely depends. Throughout the day, it's like a cosmic house, you could say, because it keeps changing. This is how the house looks, which is gray. From outside, it's like an elephant skin. It's very rough. It's very secretive. You don't really know what's inside. The external boundary wall is laterite stone. And all the color and all the kind of intense color are all inside. So you can see here the yellow tiles is something that you see as a reflection inside. This is the lobby. We spend quite a bit of time designing the staircase like a sculpture that comes inside the house. And you can see the swimming pool here, which is entering the lobby. So when you swim, you are inside the house and you're outside the house. This is the view from the other side, from the drawing room. And that's the staircase that is like a spiral going inside the space and bringing light down, all in black and white mosaic. That's the terrace garden of the first floor. And this is the system of just reflected light. So the sun hits in the morning on the yellow and reflect, and then when you are inside, you see that massive painting, which is around 10 meter by 3 meter as a reflection. That works in the evening on the orange wall. And this is the way the swimming pool goes inside, deep inside the house. Last project, which is the Franco-German embassy, which is a project which is getting finished now. It's our last project, very important for us because it's an important political project in a way that is the first Franco-German embassy. We won that competition against Marina Tabassum in 2009. And it has been a very long process, very complicated. Of course, you have two clients. The French and the German don't always understand each other very well. So we came out with this concept that France and Germany now, and even more now than before, are kind of at the heart of Europe. Now, if in the next election France is going the wrong way, it could completely destroy Europe. So we decided, I mean, that was far before. At that time, everything was good. Now things are a bit different, but we decided that a spiral, a kind of DNA, would make an interesting symbol for these two embassies coming together. And of course, there is a bit of irony in it, because in this kind of Franco-German Rubik's Cube, nobody can divorce. You're married for life. So there's one spiral which is in concrete, one spiral which is in clay bricks, and they integrate each other. That means everybody has half a story, and it keeps turning like that. So you have to see your German neighbors every day at every floor. There is no escape. So this is how the project intertwine with each other. It's also a square plot with a square building. It's very interesting to design an embassy today. It's also very scary because it's like building a fortress. It's high security jail where it's for keeping the people out instead of keeping the people in. So there is a bit of an irony in this. It's a square plot which is around 80 meter by 80 meter. There's a tower in the center, which is the square tower, where it has to be 25 meters away from the street so that if there is a bomb blast, you don't get too much effect on your building. So everything is designed with this technology, which is defense technology. It has nothing to see with normal building. It's basically a big machine to protect yourself, to duck the bomb, the truck, the Kalashnikov. So everything is quite weird. It's really like designing a jail. And then you have this low-rise building, the front and the back, which are for the visa section or which are for the technical thing, which are built a bit like a fortress. They are low. They are not really easy to attack. So everything is built in that perspective, which makes it look actually like a fortress. You have a boundary wall, and then you have the castle, and then you have the dungeon. And this is how this project came out. So you can see the facade, the south facade, which is the main facade here, which has these two spirals intertwining with each other. And you have that atrium inside, which is the reference to Islamic architecture, which has the lift. So it's a big glass lift which comes inside the building, which makes the ambassador feel like James Bond every morning when he goes to his office. That's how the building looks. That's a very old 3D. And that's the model which was exhibited in the Dakar Art Summit last year, which shows how the project is coming up in that squarish plot. So this is now getting built, getting finished. This is the basement, which is for parking, even though it looks more like a contemporary art center. We are just going to park Mercedes in that basement. It's column, like mushroom column, all in exposed concrete. I must say I was very impressed by the level of architecture in Bangladesh. They have a young generation of architects, which is absolutely promising. Very interesting, very close to their historical past, very close to modern architecture. A bit like in Ahmedabad, I could see an adequation between these two cities who have a strong school of architecture, a strong modern architecture, a bigger tradition, and how all that together create a milieu that I must say we don't have in Delhi or in Bombay or in Chennai. Maybe Ahmedabad, I think, is the closest to this with CEPT, and in Dhaka you have BUET, the School of Architecture. And here, this is the corridor of the consulate when it was under construction, all made with concrete bricks that we did for this project. Very nice bricks. They also have very high quality. And then the sketching process, instead of being something you do only at the beginning, is something that you do constantly till the end to resolve technical problem. That is the top of the lift, which is in this cage, to resolve the problem of the hanging of that lift into that cage. So these are sketches which we keep drawing like that in sketchbook. They are not easy, they are not beautiful, but they are very useful in the process of construction. This is the way we saw that cage when you look at it from down up, which is a series of diaphragm that keeps closing, and the light will come through it that is in the center of the building. These are technical issue of resolving a triangle of metal with a glass, and even how you measure the glass. All these things are things that we have to do constantly, which are part of our work in getting it constructed, which is really hands-on, which is really explaining with sketches. And in that case, sketches is the way to communicate with Bangladeshi workers. There are also some Chinese company. Even though, I mean, they may not speak very good English, the sketching process has been really useful in this. These are technical details of fixing louvers. So all that is explained, and is of course, after that there's a computer drawing, but this is the first step to resolving this. This is the view you get from inside that cage. So it's all made of tubular section with glass, and when you look up, it looks like this interesting diaphragm which bring light inside the project. These are real picture of that structure, which looks a little bit like a bamboo structure, but it's very strong. It keeps the building together. And it looks a bit like a gigantic plant when you take the lift and you take it up. Now this building is almost finished. Very good workmanship in terms of brick, in terms of exposed concrete. So this is now going to open very soon. These are the facade work, which we have red bricks in clay, gray bricks in concrete, black bricks in concrete, and marble insert, which are coming at regular interval. So this is, this is going to be our next thing. Voilà. Thank you very much.